It was just like I'd been so mad at God for such a long time that when I decided to like actually see if it was God's fault, God was like, oh, hey, I never left. And that was so hard for me because I'm like, oh, but I'm sure you have. And it's like, no, remember this time like that was me. And remember this time that was me. And so I can't say everything's perfect today, but I'll just say like rough times, hard times in marriage. But at the same time, like I think somewhere early on, I just learned like you keep showing up and trying to be better, and eventually it works.
Well, what's up, crew? It's Adam. You're listening to The Conversation. Today is the 11th episode in our South Dakota series. Also today, we are continuing on in our New Year series with one of my closest friends, Jason VanRuler. Jason is a well-known therapist, author, speaker, and we are talking today about how to improve our emotional health in this new year, 2025. In case you don't know, though, once a month, we drop a South Dakota episode only here on the podcast. And I can't stress it enough. Even if you are not from or you do not care about South Dakota, I will pray for your soul. But also, I just have no doubt that you are going to love this conversation today. To get us started, though, because it is a South Dakota episode, first off, a random fun fact about the state of South Dakota. And I have to say, I honestly question still if this is real. It feels a bit like the movie National Treasure, but supposedly behind Abraham Lincoln's head on Mount Rushmore, there is a hidden chamber called the Hall of Records. And the original goal of this chamber in Abraham Lincoln's head on Mount Rushmore was to hold important historical documents. As I'm reading this feels fake, like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Now, although the grand plan for the hall had to be abandoned, the idea is still real, and the room, it does exist. And so how about that? The Hall of Records. That is a random fun fact about our state. Secondly, on these South Dakota episodes, I typically share hidden gems, and today I want to highlight some South Dakota steakhouses. Now, I have to confess, my personal favorite place to get a steak to this day is Maury's here in Sioux Falls. Shout out to Maury's. But today I have 3 steakhouses I'm going to recommend, and I'm trusting the word of my new assistant, Emily, on these 3 places because I haven't been to any of them. The first place is the Feather's Nest in Ward, South Dakota. Now, I love small towns. I'm not sure that I've been to Ward. I could be wrong on that. The second place is the Brandon Steakhouse in Brandon, South Dakota. Shout out. I've been told by Emily the salad bar is amazing, but this is not salad bars in South Dakota. This is steakhouses. And then lastly, Table's Steakhouse in the big city of Castlewood, South Dakota. Castlewood, South Dakota, shout out to you. I actually love the town of Castlewood. Got many memories there myself. South Dakota friends, though, I need to know what steakhouses am I missing? I love steak. Hit me up on your favorites. Today, though, that is our hidden gems. Well, before we go any further, I need to give a huge shout out to our partners. These are partners that I know and trust, and that's why I want you to know about them as well. Our first partner today is First Interstate Bank. Friends, I've been doing my personal banking with First Interstate since 2007. 18 years. Their mission is to help people and their money work better together. They have over 300 locations throughout 14 different states. Again, if you're listening and you don't live in South Dakota, this still applies to you. From Arizona to Colorado, Washington State to the great state of South Dakota. Find more information and find a location near you. Visit firstinterstatebank.com. So again, find more information and a location near you, firstinterstatebank.com. Our second partner is the Tyler Goff Group. What is up, Tyler Goff? Friends, if you are on the hunt for a new home anywhere near Sioux Falls, genuinely look no further. Over the last 15 years, my wife and I have bought and sold 3 different houses through the Tyler Goff Group. I literally tell people that I would trust them with my life. Through the Tyler Goff Group, you won't just find a place to live. Instead, you will find a home that you love to buy or sell a house. Do not look anyplace else. Simply go to tylergoffgroup.com. Again, that's tylergoffgroup.com. Shout out to you, Tyler Goff, one of my best friends. Today, though, we have one of my other very, very dear friends, Jason VanRuler. And when I say genuinely a friend of mine, again, one of my closest friends, Jason is an amazing therapist. He is an author, a speaker. He is the best of the best. If you don't follow him on Instagram yet, what are you waiting for? Go find Jason on Instagram. You won't be disappointed. Today, though, Jason shares how to evaluate where you are emotionally right now, and he gives us some steps that we can take to improve our emotional and relational health in 2025. My favorite part, I knew this was a big deal for Jason, is where he shares a part of his own story. And he's got some brokenness in his own story, how he became a therapist and his journey of finding God himself. Friends, you are going to love this conversation. Jason, I love you so much. On that note, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation. So Jason, we typically hear a person's highlight reel. Are you willing to share a current unpretty part of your life? And this is a real question, by the way. It could be stress, could be grief, anxiety, whatever. Is there a current unpretty part of your life?
Boy, that's a good question. Unpretty part. I think for me, I'm trying to do all the things. But what I realize is I'm not super good with systems. And so an unpretty part of my life is looking at doing 20 different things at once and asking if it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so what that's led to is actually having to slow down enough to look at what am I doing?
Yeah.
And sometimes when we slow down enough to look at it, you go, that's why I didn't slow down to look at it. And so it's messy just because I think I tend to be driven to just like do the next thing in front of me. And I'm not so good at tending to my own yard sometimes.
Wow.
And so, I was walking the dog the other day and just literally even tending to my own yard. There's a bunch of tree stuff and sticks. And I'm like, man, I got to pick all this up. But I think just every year as we get closer to New Year in my life, I do a version of this.
Yep.
Where I go, it's great to be out and going, but what's it look like at home? And the messy part is, I can't really think of a year where I've looked at home and thought, I'm really proud of this. Like that hasn't happened yet. I've said like, there's some really great things. There's some things I'm really doing well. But I think for me, I just go, I still want this to be better and cleaner and more efficient. And I'm just not there yet.
Whoa. I kind of asked this jokingly, but also honestly. So because you're a therapist, your life isn't perfect.
Well, I mean, it is.
I mean, but genuinely, I think a lot of people, even for me, and me being a pastor, my spiritual life, I think is a lot of times assumed perfect. And I get up and I preach on Sundays. Probably similar for you. It's like, oh, your marriage is probably figured out. Your private life, you're probably the perfect dad. You're probably, is that?
Well, all of that is true. I mean, I said I had some sticks in my yard. I mean, I did admit to that.
No, but is there any truth to that?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I wish there wasn't, but the truth is like, if I had everything figured out, I wouldn't be a very good therapist because I'd be really hard to work with and I have no empathy and I couldn't relate. And so when I talk to people, I mean, it's kind of this assumption that somehow I've got it all put together. Yeah. And I want to. I mean, I'll give you that. I totally want to, but I don't. And so there are parts I think that are struggles that'll always be a struggle for me. Wow. I just have to keep working on. And maybe I'm a little farther down the road because I've done more work in that area. But there's certainly parts of life where I haven't done as much work. And I go, well, you're farther ahead in that than me. So sometimes clients are really surprised to learn, like, I don't have it all figured out. I'm willing to try to figure it out. I'm willing to do the work, but I definitely don't have it all figured out.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for sharing that. Because I think there's that assumption of like, if I get the right information, then I'll be able to fix everything in me. And yet, even if you have all the right training and all the right whatever, it's just the journey called life.
Well, and why would you want to fix it? Yeah. I mean, because a lot of times, like, that's the most beautiful part of who we are is the messy stuff. And so what we do sometimes with healing is we set out to fix what we call imperfections. And those are the things that often make us who we are. They make us unique. They make us generous and caring. And so we're not out to be perfect. We're out to do things better and more effectively. But yeah, I think it'd be really boring if we fixed everything.
Yeah.
I think we can change our relationship with it, though.
That's really, really good. So, Jason, you're a well-known therapist, huge Instagram following, speaking at all kinds of events, author. For me, I'm so honored to be your friend. And for me, that's like just one of the coolest things. And what I tell other people, whether it's connecting you with somebody or I'm just talking about my friend Jason in general, is all that is so cool. But like, what's great about him is the person he is. And just he's so smart. Like, you're so smart and so sharp. One of the things I love about you is you lead with brokenness, even in yourself, of like, hey, I'm a work in progress. And I've never once felt like, oh, let me inform you how to do everything. And I just think that's really endearing. And then you combine that again with your intelligence and your expertise and just your experience. It's awesome. So you're just an amazing person. And I know kind of a lot of your story. But if you're willing to share just kind of the Cliff Notes version of kind of where you came from, maybe specifically, was there a few kind of defining pivotal moments in your life that you're willing to share, good, bad, or otherwise, that kind of make you who you are? Because again, it's been so cool. So many people are following you on Instagram, but again, for me, it's like, the person he is like the real treasure.
Well, that, literally makes my week. So thank you for that.
It's a true story.
That means a lot. Well, let's start with chapter 1. I'll just give you the whole thing. It's going to take about 3 hours.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah,
Lay down on the couch and I'll
That's great. That sounds good. I'll do this. This is very uncomfortable, by the way, because now I'm talking about me. I think I'm not allowed to do that. So
exactly.
If I lose my license over this, what would I say about that? Born in Sioux Falls, right?
Yeah.
Had a pretty idyllic childhood until 8 years old. My parents divorced. And so what happened is I kind of had this vision for how life was going to be, and it seemed like it was going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We had a above ground pool in our backyard, and we had a Nintendo, and like we were doing all the things. And then it just all changed. And so when my parents divorced, that led to a lot of chaos in the house. And so what happened is as they divorced, it got really messy really fast. And then it just never really changed from that.
Ugh.
And so I think, I was so thankful to have my initial childhood kind of be one of stability and security, because at least I kind of knew what it looked like. And then it got shaken up. And so, at that point, it was just sort of hang on and get through it. And I know my parents did the best they could, but it was really difficult. And some hard things happened and struggled with abuse and things like that. And that all really shaped me. Right.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went from, I think, this bright-eyed kid who's like, man, this is going to be pretty easy, to someone who said, well, I don't think it ever gets better. And so it kind of shifted for me. And that was really important because I think my mindset changed and I started to just believe that how it was is how it would be. And so I just sort of stopped trying. I went through school. I had been a really good student, just became an average student because I just thought, kind of, what's the point? And then I graduated and I was certain I'd create a new life. And so I literally think like I was at my graduation party. I'm just like, I'm going to do this different. You'll see. I cringe now when I say it because I'm sure everyone around me is like, okay, yeah, right. And so like you just wait. I got it all figured out. Right. And fast forward a couple of years, I didn't have it all figured out. And in fact, I just recreated everything. Right. I was like, well, I don't like the way you do it. You watch this. And then it was like a circle. Like I just ran, but all the way back to the start. And so I ended up in this position in my early 20s, which is now my life wasn't any good, but it was my fault. And so I was like, oh man, who do I blame this on? Right. So I think I could blame parts on certain people, but now that I'm an adult, feels like I probably can't blame somebody. And so I tried to blame God, and I was like, I think this is God's fault. And then I was like, oh man, but what I believe about God is I don't think God wants this for me. And so it really led to this moment of, I guess I have to take responsibility or not.
Whoa.
And I'd love to say that I'm such a strong person that I did in that moment and the heavens opened up. And no way. No, that was like a decade in the works. So I mean, I had this moment where I'm like, man, you got to be responsible. You got to try. You got to change it. And then I just kind of like put my head back down and kept screwing things up. But the beautiful part is I met my wife, Jody, and she was really in my life the first person to love me and say, we can do better. And I never really had that. I had people that loved me, and I appreciate that, and I knew they cared about me, but I'd never really had someone say, like, I love you and you could be better.
Whoa.
And man, I was just hooked. I was like, I want to be better. I don't know what to do. I just kind of screw things up all the time. And so how do I do that? And that really opened my eyes to how do I get connected? How do I find people to teach me how to do this? And so that led to a lot of questions. I was probably like a very annoying preschool kid because I just kept asking everybody, what do you do? And that led me to go back to school because I always wanted to help people and get healthier and learn about marriage, and really led me here today. But I think along the way, for me, what it really took is, I think what it takes everybody is like, we all have an idea of how it's supposed to be. We have to do it on our own.
Yep.
And I think back sometimes with regret because I go, man, I could have saved so much time.
Yeah.
If I would have just listened or I would have done the things, and I know there are people that would hear this and be like, Jason, I told you. And I'm like, oh man, but I just had to do it for myself.
Yeah.
But I think when I shifted is when I became invested and when I started to believe that it could change. And then I think too, for me, it was just like, I'd been so mad at God for such a long time that when I decided to like actually see if it was God's fault, God was like, oh, hey, I never left. And that was so hard for me because I'm like, oh, but I'm sure you have. And it was like, no, remember this time, like that was me. And remember this time that was me. And so I can't say everything's perfect today, but I'll just say like rough times, hard times in marriage. But at the same time, like I think somewhere early on, I just learned like you keep showing up and trying to be better, and eventually it works.
That's so good. Yeah. And thanks again for sharing that, because your job isn't to share. Your job is to listen. And
I'm like having a panic attack over right now.
Well, I think it's so cool because whether it's on a stage in Nashville or a stage in town here, just the times I've seen you do your thing, I'm like, oh, but like the person he is even better. So just thanks for sharing that part. Maybe two questions about your story. First off, like what specifically, I knew like part of you like knew you wanted to be a therapist or like whatever from a young age, but was there like kind of a turning point where it's like, no, that's really what I want to do? And kind of what led you there and what's kept you there, like in a good way? And then maybe specifically God, like what's that relationship looked like? If you want to even share just the high points of like as a kid, like to now, what's that look like? So two totally different questions.
No, those are great.
Why the therapist? Like, and what like keeps you there? What drew you there? And then the God part of things.
Yeah. Well, I always joke, I was dressed like a therapist. So that was part of it. But as soon as I found out you could get paid for overthinking, I was in. I was like, this is, so all you have to do is be anxious and overthink everything. Nailed it. That's my job. That's what I want to do. It just was a good fit. But I mean, really for me, I was doing staffing. I was managing a staffing company, and I work with people who were really pretty much homeless. I mean, they worked one day, got paid, had to figure it out that night, come back. And I loved those people so much, and I really had a heart for them.
Yeah.
And I think that really, for me, kind of brought back this desire to help people. I have always felt really connected to people who are just struggling to get through the day.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that, I was like, the business part is great, but man, I want to help you like not be here tomorrow. And that was a little counter to the business. The business is like, I want you to keep coming.
Keep coming back.
I want you to figure out why you're here and change it.
It's good.
And so that really ignited for me that passion of just like, if people want to be different, I want to help them. And then I kind of was like, hey, I think I've always wanted this.
That's so cool. Was there a part of maybe your brokenness too that drew you there? Like for me, the other day someone was talking about like what sets Adam's preaching apart from other, like distinguishes it from others is just his passion. There's other teachers who are better, but Adam's passion. And for me, where my passion comes from in preaching is I can't imagine what it would feel like to not know that I can talk with Jesus because I need him so much. Is there a kind of looking at yourself? Is there a part of like, I kind of went into it also for myself and to help people like me. Is any of that true or no?
Nothing about me.
This is all for others.
It's all for others. Do you want to talk about your? No, I'm just kidding. No, of course. I mean, I think we help the people we once were, and so for me to see people who just literally did not know how to make it better but wanted it. Yeah, I was so passionate about it because I was that person in my own way, right? And everybody, it's a spectrum and everybody's different. But I mean, I have never felt above other people. And so when I got to work with somebody who's just like, I didn't even know it could be better. Like, hey, guess what? It could be. Like, to me, that was the best job in the world, is literally just opening the door to it could be better. With God, I mean, I think when I was a kid, I don't really have a lot of understanding of God other than probably, the more academic understanding. We went to a lot of different churches, and so had a lot of different faith systems, and then really spent, outside of high school and early 20s pretty angry with God, and because that seemed like the cool thing to do, and so I was angry, and then I just I just gave up being mad one day, and then God was there.
Whoa.
And it was so weird because...
Can you pinpoint that at all?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's like a moment. No, that's like a total moment.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
No more details needed.
I mean, I'm happy to share.
I don't want you to lose your license.
Lose my license. I mean, I'll just say, like, I had this moment where just like I had been fighting that, like, there just couldn't be. Like, there just couldn't be a God the way that I thought God should be, and me be who I am, right? Like, those two things couldn't exist. And so I just remember having this moment. We were freshly married. It was already not going well, and just being so angry at everybody else, right? And just having this moment, I always get, kind of emotional. I think about it because I just had this moment where I was like, God, like this can't work. This is, it's all outbound. And in this moment, it just gave me chills because I just heard God's voice in my head, like, well, I'm still here. Like, it's messy, but I'm still here. And I was like, well, now what do you do? Like, somehow I just got this thing that I was pretty sure I couldn't get, which is God speaking to me. Yeah. And now what? Now I guess we got to change some things. Whoa. And so I think when I paused long enough to listen, what I found is that I'd been talking over God my whole life. And that hadn't meant that God wasn't speaking to me. It meant I wasn't listening.
Oh my gosh, Jason.
And that was so hard and so beautiful, right? It was beautiful because I was like, oh man, there's a lot of hope here. The hard thing is, I wish I would have listened sooner. Because had I listened sooner, it might have been easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I told you I wasn't going to throw any curveballs, and it's like right to your deep dark secret.
I assume that's right.
Gosh, I was like,
I'm okay with it.
When you were like, yes, I was like, oh no, sorry. It's okay. Okay, so shifting to this new year, we're starting off a brand new year, this series on the new year and how to just go into this new 2025 mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Like, how can we be the best version of ourselves? For the person who's listening and maybe had a rough 2024, actually, he was on the podcast, so I can share it. Like, my friend Tyler had a really hard 2024. He's like, I will not miss this year. For a person who's maybe went through, this is not Tyler, went through divorce, it kind of failed, or just cancer or whatever. What's the best way to deal with 2024 if it's not been great as we look forward to this next year? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. What do you do with that? If this has been a sucky year, and what do I do with it in a healthy way? Because my natural thing would be just forget about it and move ahead. Like, in a bad move ahead.
Yeah, just run from it.
Just cut it off and it doesn't happen.
Just take off running. I would just say, sorry that happened. And then secondly, what'd you learn? What'd you learn from it? And if you don't know, figure it out. Whoa. So what'd you learn? And then how do you take what you learned to fuel you doing something different?
So, like, literally maybe go sit at a coffee shop and write down what I learned?
Yeah. I mean, so let's use the example of, like, you're in a relationship that ended or failed, or it ended in divorce. Why'd you get divorced? What happened? And don't just tell their part, tell your part. And what I mean by that is it's easy to say, well, it ended because, if you only knew. Yeah, I get that. But why did it end from your side? And what'd you learn about that, right? And so sometimes you might have learned, well, I picked the wrong person, or I need to be better at conflict work, or whatever the thing is. What'd you learn? And then once you learn something, don't beat yourself up with it. So that's the other fun thing people do is they're like, well, I learned an important lesson. I'm like, that's awesome. They're like, now I'm guilty and ashamed. Like, what was the point of learning? What was the point? And they're like, well, that's what you do is you learn something and then you beat yourself with it. I'm like, well, what if you didn't? What if you just didn't go back there again and you used it to kind of fuel the next thing?
Explain that. So I went through a divorce and I didn't handle conflict well, or I was a workaholic and that's why my marriage ended. What would it like? So I learned those two things.
Yeah.
I need to work on conflict. I need to stop being defensive. Also, like you might want to not work 24/7.
Right.
How do I let that fuel my next year in a good way?
Yeah. So if I know that about myself and I know that's my temptation to struggle with those things, how do I protect myself so I don't end up there again?
Yeah.
How do I have some boundaries? How do I ask people how to improve? So it's just sort of like if you have had a hard year and you've had pain, the luxury of that is you know what you struggle with.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of people walk through life, they don't even know what their struggles are. You do. So knowing your struggles, how do you work with that instead of against it?
That's good. That's good. Okay. So kind of look into the year ahead now, 2025. When it comes to kind of being maybe mentally and emotionally healthy, and trying to become a better version of myself, what are some maybe things that you see clients struggle with as we step into a new year? Or what are some maybe things that we can kind of like gauge our current pulse and just mentally and emotional health into this new year? Are there things that you're like, here's a few things just to think about or consider or whatever?
Yeah. So I do this life audit with people, which is, it's called reps, but it's how are you doing relationally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
It's good.
And so you just pick 1 to 10 in each category. 1 is, doing the worst, 10 is doing the best. Where are you at? Why are you there? Right. And then what would it take to be one number higher? So if you say, well, spiritually, I'm at a 5 because I'm not going to church, I'm not reading the Bible, I'm not doing a lot of those things, but I think I do sometimes. And 6 would be, if I wanted to be 6, I'd just go to church, at least 3 times a month.
Yeah.
Okay, well, great, do that. And then the question becomes, in each quadrant, what number do you want it to be? So if it's a 5 and you don't like that, what are you shooting for? And if it's a 10, that's a problem, right? But if you say it's an 8, well, then just get to 6 first and then get to 7. So it's important to kind of look through those different areas and just say, am I where I want to be? And if I'm not, do I know why I'm not?
That's really, really good. Gosh, there's so many things I could go from here.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different approaches. So like, let's say it's let's say the physical, I want to work out, or emotional, because E is emotional.
Yep. Emotional.
Give me an example of that.
Yep. So how have I been feeling emotionally and how am I dealing with those emotions? So
Okay.
if you would say, I'm really angry a lot, I don't really understand that. Or I get overwhelmed emotionally and I don't know what to do with that. Or I haven't felt anything for a long time. I've been really numb.
That's good. Okay. So with goal, let's maybe not dig into R and E quick, like specifically, advice on how to best pursue actually changing.
Yeah.
From a therapist. So whether it's working out, whether it's going to church, whether it's dealing with something emotionally, any advice there on how to best approach it? Like I tell it on the podcast constantly, talking about John Acuff's All It Takes Is a Goal, just because it's been so profound for me, and Atomic Habits. But is there any words of advice from a therapist when it comes to
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know this is therapist, but I mean, I would just say, anytime I'm working with someone, I do this weird thing where I try to talk them out of it. because do you really want it? Do you? And if you don't, can I just give you courage to say you don't? Not everybody has to have a 6-pack. Not everybody has to do everything perfect. Not everyone has to make $1 million a year. That's not for everybody.
It's good.
So maybe you don't want it, and that's okay. That is totally okay if you don't want it. Now, there's consequences if you do or you don't, right? So either way, there's consequences. But my first thing is just sort of why do you think you want that? And is that yours? Because here's what I'll tell you is when we're personally invested in our goals, we tend to make them happen. But when we're doing it for somebody else, it gets a little fuzzy, right? We're a little less motivated. And so what a lot of people do is they end the year with a list of who they think they should be based on what other people tell them. They decide or determine that they're inadequate, and then they try to aspire to have a life that's not theirs. And then they're disappointed when they don't get it. And so the thing is that your life? And if it is, then it's easy.
Okay, so I don't think, maybe I do wrestle with it. Gosh, I feel like you're a therapist right now.
I'm billing you for this.
You are
this
billing me.
This is going to cost you a lot. Yeah.
Gosh.
This is very expensive.
I didn't think I was going to ask this. How do I know what is actually me and what is something that I feel like I'm chasing that's not me?
I love that. That is the biggest problem most people have. They don't actually know what they want.
Yeah.
They know what everybody else wants for them.
Gosh.
They know what they think they should want, but they don't really know. And so the way you get through it is you try something. And then you get it. And then you go, did I really want that? And sometimes you do. Sometimes you go, that was amazing. I'm so glad I got that. Other times you go, no, right? So like a good example is I want to be a guy that runs marathons, right? So I train to do it, but I'm bored the whole time, right? And I'm like, this is so cool. I'm running marathons, right? I'm like, I'm also so bored. I hated all of it.
Gosh,
And I'm like, but this is cool, right? And I like looking around at the people and I'm like, we're all having fun, right? And everyone's like, I don't know if we're having fun,
Jason.
but it's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right? Where is it? Turns out I'm just a guy that likes to run long distance on the bike trails in the summer and get really sweaty and almost throw up. Like that's kind of my jam. I don't need to wear a special uniform to do that or run on a track or like I can just be miserable anywhere. And I appreciate that. But I had to learn that. Right. So some of what people struggle with is they spend a lot of time thinking about what they want and not a lot of time testing what they want.
That's good.
And you don't know until you get there. And so even if it's like just picking something you go, I don't even know about that. Like pick a thing.
Yeah.
Pick a thing and get it and then see.
That's so good. Okay, so the relational part of things. Let's say I'm a guy that I'm like, I don't want to end in divorce, but I really don't. My wife's trying to push me into caring about our marriage and I could really care less. So that's maybe something I don't want to do, but probably should. Like, if I'm that guy, what are you saying to me?
Yeah, I guess if you don't want to do anything, you must like it how it is. And that's okay. You can like it how it is.
But my wife's nagging me and whatever
Yeah,
else.
well, that's going to keep happening. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, as long as you're okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that part's not going to change unless you do something. And so we can say like, I'm uncomfortable with it or I don't know about that. But I mean, if you're not willing to do anything, then that must be you saying it's okay. And if that's okay with you, it's okay with me, but there's consequences, right? And so you might say, I'm not really willing to work on this relationship. And as a result, my person's going to be miserable and we're going to fight a lot. It's going to be really unhappy. And you might say, well, that's okay with me. I don't know if it's okay with them, but if that's okay with you, start there. But then the thing is you have to tell somebody. So if you're in a relationship and you do the quadrant thing and you go, well, it's really bad and I don't want to change it or do anything, the least you can do is tell them. You can just say like, hey, it's a 4. Pretty happy with a 4. What do you think? But a lot of times we don't communicate that and we tell everybody we want an 8, but we do a 4 level work and then we're shocked when it doesn't work out.
On the relationship side of things, let's say I'm married to that person and I want an 8 or a 9 and they're happy with a 2 or a 3. Specifically, like if I'm a gal and I'm married to a dude, what would you say to me as the gal to try to like work on my marriage?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Well, you can totally make the other person do it, right? You can't. That'd be awesome. Yeah. So you can't do that. So what I would tell a person and clients in that situation is be an 8. Be an 8, right? No matter what. Be your own version of an 8 and then hope that they catch up. The thing is what we usually do is we say, well, I'm going to work a little and I'm going to look at you to work a little. And then if you work a little, I'll work a little. And it'll kind of just back and forth. Sometimes you might have to be an 8 for like a long time before they catch on. Right. But don't use their resistance as an excuse not to be an 8 if that's what you want.
It's good.
Yeah. It's hard though. I mean, I do just want to say like, if you're in that spot, it's easy for me to kind of make it sound simple and boss people. But let's be honest, like that's a tough spot to be in where you go, hey, Jason, I'm just busy being an 8 and they're a 2 and I don't know if they'll ever catch up. That's hard.
Super hard. I think specifically like as to bring Jesus into it. If you're a Jesus follower, it's just like, Lord, I am doing this for you. Yeah. I am not doing this for him or her, you know?
Yep.
That is a really, and I'm sure, I know I have seen people in that marriage.
So hard.
And you're just like, oh my gosh. The E part of things, emotional. Like, so in this new year, we were maybe at a 3 and we want to be 5 or a 6 or a 7 or 8. What can we do when it comes to our emotional health, like in this new year?
Yeah. Well, we have to get good at kind of identifying our emotions. So the first thing is, do we even speak the language? Because sometimes the hardest part is that we don't even know how to talk about it.
Yep.
If I say to someone like, how are you feeling? And they say good. Well, maybe there's some work there.
Yeah.
Right? Well, what's the emotion you felt the most lately? Positive. Okay, we got to do so. So there's no judgment, but it's like if we don't have awareness about our own stuff, it's going to be hard to work on it. And so the first thing I'd say is like learn about that part.
It's good. 2 more steps. What else should I do? Like once I kind of identify what it is.
Yeah. So you identify. For me, I think what I recommend to clients the most is to journal. There's a thing called a 5-minute journal. It's a quick check-in in the morning, check-in in the evening. Literally takes 5 minutes. That's why they call it that. But it's really good at just consistently seeing how you're feeling.
Yep.
And then the next step would be, can you tell someone about this?
Good.
Yeah. And if you don't know how, can you go to someone and say, like, I want to talk about my emotions, but I think it's weird. Can you help? And see what they say. But it's kind of, do I know what's happening? Am I tracking what's happening? And can I talk to somebody about what's happening?
That's great. Two specific things, and then I have one last question. If my feelings, something I'm really seeing in men right now is either stressed and angry, just because like it's just like life is overwhelming them, or totally numb, like just kind of checked out a little bit. Like I'm fried, whether I'm successful or not. Like those 2 feelings. What can I do? Like whether if I'm stressed or just constantly overwhelmed and angry, or I'm just totally numb right now, and it's just like any thought specifically to that person that what can I do?
Well, it's really hard to be in that spot. And it's really hard to feel numb because you often don't have a lot of motivation to change.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, I just feel
I don't have any energy.
Yeah, I'm just lethargic. I don't really want to do anything, but I don't like where I'm at. And so kind of the hard truth is it won't change unless you do something. And so what I often would tell people is like, you have to do one of 2 things. You have to be willing to change and actually do something different. And I know it'll be hard and there'll be all these things you have to deal with and you don't want to, but still you have to if you want it to be different.
Yep.
And then the other thing is I think sometimes we have to disconnect our identity from those things because sometimes that becomes our identity. If you ask me, Jason, how you doing? I'm like, I was so busy with work. I'm so busy with work. I've got so many opportunities. We have this identity and it doesn't really suit us.
No.
But we tell everybody. And so sometimes the problem is we keep telling everybody this thing about ourselves that we don't want to be true. And we need to come up with a different story.
That's good. That's good. What could that story be?
Yeah. Sometimes I'm stressed and I need to take some time for myself. And so I am.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that true? I would definitely be guilty of the busy thing. Last question. You do so much. If I want to take something from you, whether it's a course, whatever, where's the best place to find that? And is there anything specific that you're like, check this out? Yeah.
Well, this is as vulnerable as I'll ever be. So that'll never happen again. So if you liked this, I hope you enjoyed it.
That's right. You will not get this on the course.
This was it. No, I love to talk like this, and I love talking with you. But jasonvr.com, got all the courses and the things, and some resources to point you to other people too. Because, at the end of the day, I'm still the guy that started out just wanting to help people.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe, and we didn't talk about it a whole lot, but the best work I do isn't me.
Yeah.
The best work that's been done in my life has been by some talented therapists and friends. But the truth is it was God. And so when I do my best work, it's me getting out of the way. And so I would just tell people, like, if they're listening, I want to help you with resources and all the things. And also, you presently have the best resource you could have. It's just up to you if you go to that or not.
Jason VanRuler. I know I've said it twice already. I love you so much. I hope everybody listen and enjoy this conversation. Gosh, it's so good. Thanks to you, Jason. Thanks to our partners, First Interstate Bank and the Tyler Goff Group. Hello to both of them. Lastly, thanks to all of you who listen to the conversation each and every week. I do these conversations for you, the listeners. Have a great day. God bless. And I just hope that you have a fantastic 2025 ahead.